Jeff.
Hey!
Let's go, Jeff.
Let's go.
Oh,
Thank you guys. I appreciate that so much. And I'm honored and humbled to be on this morning. And Edward, man, I appreciate you, dude. It's always great having conversations with you and being able to help any way I can. I'm so proud of you, man, and what you're doing. You're a leader, and it's cool to see your business. You continue to grow, you continue to get better, and anybody in your organization is blessed to be able to follow somebody like you. And as well as I just want to give a shout out to Ed and Yvonne Ortiz. Man, I love you guys. I don't know if you're on this morning, but just want to say hi. I love you guys, and I appreciate all you guys have always done for us, as well as Jason and Yvonne Jason and Jackie and Eric and Bryn. Thank you guys so much. You know, you guys have just been incredible friends to us over the years and an inspiration, and just watching you guys build a family business is exciting. And for those of you guys listening in, you know, I think a lot of times, anytime we're in life, we take leadership for granted. We take where we're at for granted. We take, it's not like we do it intentionally, right? But we get used to things. And, you know, it's like for those of you guys that live in Florida, you know, you have incredible weather and you get used to it. And, you know, I'm sure this time of year, you know, come around Christmas, you're going to sometimes you hear people complaining in the summer about it being warm. And then you forget that it's still 75 degrees in Florida right now. And most of the country has snow, you know, and it's just that same philosophy that we forget how blessed we are sometimes when the blessing has been there for so long. And I would just encourage you to always remember how blessed you are to have incredible people like that in your life that are willing to pour into you and tell you the truth at any moment. And it's not something that's normal in the world. And I think because in Primerica, it's normal. And to be honest with you, it's not normal in Primerica, it's just normal in a winner's hierarchy, right? And you guys are blessed to be there. And so thank you guys so much for having me on. I know that anytime, I told my wife last night, I'm like, I always respect, appreciate, and take it as a big responsibility anytime somebody allows me to influence or speak to or puts me on a stage in front of something they've worked their entire life for. And so I promise you that I get on this morning and hope that I can just give you something that will help change your life like these incredible people in Primerica have for me. So real quick, I'm just going to go through a fast version of my story and then maybe give you guys some tips, and then I'll open it up for Q&A at the end for a few minutes. But a little bit about me. I grew up in a city in Utah called West Valley. And West Valley is like an area in Salt Lake City, and it wasn't a good area. It's still not a good. In fact, it's still a horrible area, honestly. Not a great area to grow up. When I was growing up, it was, you know, in the late 80s, early 90s. There was a lot of gang violence and drugs, and my older brothers, I'm one of six, and my older brothers, I have two older brothers and an older sister. And they were hanging out with the wrong crowd and running the streets, and, you know, and so I just didn't have these great examples growing up, but I always wanted to be somebody. I always wanted to do something in my life. And I don't know why I looked at it differently than my siblings. I didn't look at my situation that I had in life and went, oh, poor me, life sucks, we're broke, we're poor. I looked at it like, dang, I would see, I don't know, you know, you guys are in Florida. I don't know, you see it all the time. You see a Bentley, or you see a Ferrari, or you see a Lambo, or you see these big houses. And rather than thinking, wow, how awesome for them, I have always thought since I was a young kid, one day I'm going to live like that. One day I'm going to have that. I never thought for a minute that it wasn't possible for me. I always believed that if somebody else could do it, that I could do it as well. I didn't think that there was anything that separated us that I couldn't get to, right? And so growing up, I got in a lot of fights. I was angry. Thank God I didn't end up the same path as my brothers and sisters. But I was in a boxing gym, and it's honestly never the greatest environment either. So I was a boxer for a lot of years, graduated high school, didn't know what I was going to do in my life. So I started going to college, right? That's what everybody tells us to do. Go to school, get good grades, get an education, get a good job. Nobody in my family had ever even graduated high school. Okay. So I'm the first kid in my family. to just graduate high school. And so I get out of high school, I start college, and again, we're poor. So I would see nice things and I appreciated those things. I didn't look at somebody driving a nice car or living in a nice house as that was somebody else. I went, that's awesome. One day I want that too. So one day I was going to my business class. I was going to college for business, didn't know what I wanted to do. It's like most people, right? Don't know what you want to do, pick a major or whatever and start taking some classes, right? It's a good way for them to get your money. And so I started going to college, taking this business class. One day I see my professor. I show up, at the same time he does. And I liked him. Like and anybody that knows me, I've never been this like really outgoing, talkative person. I honestly, I've never been that way. Definitely wasn't that way in high school. And I never really talked a lot. I didn't have a whole lot to say. I was always the guy kind of watching, paying attention to people. And when we were in class, I just raised my hand and I want to, I'd never raised my hand in class ever in my entire life. I never asked the teacher a question because I just really didn't care. I was at school to get it over with and move on my life and go start winning. And I honestly, I never understood how anything other than, a little bit of math and reading and writing was going to help me win big in life. And so we're in business class. He's teaching this stuff. And I raise my hand. I go, "Hey, professor, I'm just wondering why you don't do this stuff, And it was a genuine question. Like, "Hey, dude, I just saw your car." And his car was like a 1989 Honda and his bumper was falling off. I'll never forget it to this day. He had 2 bungee cords on each side holding his bumper on. And a young kid, like maybe the dude made money. Maybe he was being wise financially. I don't think he did. He could have, right? But I just thought immediately when I saw the car he drove, this guy's broke. He's trying to teach me doing something he's never done before. That's what I thought. So I had this genuine question like, "Hey, dude, why don't you do this stuff? It seems to me like it makes sense what you're saying. And if you did it, you would probably have more success. So why are you teaching us something you haven't done?" And he kicked me out of class that day. I remember I leave school. I call my mom. And I say, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to quit college." Now, if you can imagine, my mom's been bragging to her friends. My mom went to college, but then all of my siblings didn't even graduate high school. So my mom, you can imagine, if you're a parent, you feel like a failure at that point. And so my mom's excited. Her son finally graduates high school. I call my mom, tell her I'm going to quit. She's trying to give me every reason why I should just stick it out, why I should just finish the semester and make my decision when I'm not emotional. And I just said, "Look, Mom, I'm not going to go back in there and pay to listen to a dude who has a life that I wouldn't trade with him." And I don't know why I thought this early on, but I quit school that day and didn't know what I was going to do in my life. I didn't know about Primerica. I just realized that I made a decision that day. I was never going to listen to somebody who didn't have what I wanted in life. And it was that day, 18 years old, didn't know what I was going to do in my life. But I did know I wasn't going to listen to anybody who didn't have what I wanted. And so I go to my girlfriend's house, which is today my wife. And I'll never forget, I'm laying on the couch and I said to her, and I didn't realize her mom was in the room, right? I said to her, I say, "Hey, I'd rather be a bum on the beach in the Bahamas than ever get a job unless someone tell me what to do, when to do it, and how to do it." And her mom hears me and goes, "What? You don't want a job?" And she was wise enough to say, "Why?" Right? Why? And I said, "Listen, I don't want someone to tell me when to show up, when to leave, when I can use the restroom, how much I'm going to get paid, what I'm worth. I don't want someone doing that. Like, I'll work hard." And she owned a business at that time. And she said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you a job and I'll put you on commission. You can show up when you want, leave when you want. You can do whatever you want." I go, "So you ain't going to tell me I got to show up to a meeting on Monday morning?" And she goes, "No, you do whatever you want." I go, "Done, I'm in." And so I started doing advertising. My first month, I made $7,400, which, in 2004, $7,400 was pretty good for I just turned 19. And so I was excited. And the next month I made $12,000. I started getting my income up in advertising. I was having fun. I was the hardest working guy there. I was at the office at 7:00 in the morning. I'd work till 7:00 at night every day. I was putting in 12, 14-hour days in advertising, and it was by choice. And I started making more money than my mother-in-law, and she didn't like that. So she cut my pay. And, it's understandable. You make a commitment and then you go, "Man, I made a bad decision. I got to change this for my business." I understand that. But when when I got my pay cut, it was actually in a letter inside of my check. And I'll never forget, when you get paid and you're on commission, what you're getting paid. It was Friday night. I'll never forget. It was Friday night. I had never opened my check. I threw it on my bed. I'm ready to take my wife out on a date. We were just dating at the time. We had dinner reservations. I got her flowers. I got a new outfit. I'm feeling fresh. I know I just got paid. I'm excited, And I get out of the shower. I open up my check and it was $5,000 short. And I call my mother-in-law. I go, hey, my check's short. She go, didn't you read the letter in the check? And I go, no, what letter? And she goes, there's a letter in your check. So I read the letter and it basically said, hey, we got to cut your pay. So I call her back and go, hey, that's fine. I understand if you guys have to do this for your business, but you owe me $5,000. We had an agreement and that agreement can move forward and I'm fine with that, but it can't go past, right? You can't go into the past and say, hey, we're going to change what we already agreed upon. I'm not doing that. And she goes, I'm sorry, Jeff, we don't have the money to pay you. And I hang up the phone. 20 minutes later, Brandon Neal calls me. And Brandon Neal at the time was making $300,000 a year in Primerica. And I had been dodging his calls. You guys listen to me. Okay. This is important because I've been dodging his calls for 1.5 years. He would set up an interview with me and I wouldn't show up. He would invite me to a meeting and I didn't show up. He would invite me to his office and I didn't show up. Week after week after week after week. He just kept following up. And we didn't have caller ID back then. We have flip phones. It wasn't that long ago. I'm only 37, but we didn't have the iPhone didn't come out, I think, till like, I don't know, 07, 08, something like that. So we had these flip phones that sometimes you get ready to make a call and you would flip it open and accidentally answer a call. And that happened to me all the time with Brandon. I would get ready to make a call and I would write hello, and it would be Brandon Neal. He was always calling me. And that day after my pay got cut, he called me. He followed up. And this is why I tell everybody, you got to follow up. You have to follow up. It blows me away. It blows me away that nobody follows up. My wife and I just went to go look at this piece of property, 160 acres, about 5 minutes north from us. And we want to buy it, right? We want to buy it. The city we grew up in is growing so fast. And like, I want a big piece of land so nobody can ever build a house next door to me, right? So we look at this 160 acres. We go see it. I want to buy it. I would write a check for it right now. But guess what I refuse to do? I refuse to be the one that follows up with the real estate agent. I'm not doing it. They can follow up with me. If they don't follow up, I don't want to do business with them. So I think it's important for you to remember to follow up, because the greatest thing that ever happened to me was learning before I even joined Primerica from a man who followed up. He followed up with me. And so this was a habit that I learned later on in my career, because that's how I got started. A lot of you do things with other people, how you got started, right? But I want you to know that follow-up was so important. So I answered that call. I decided to join Primerica. I joined Primerica. I start part-time. And this was April of 2006. April of 2006, I joined Primerica. I'm 20 years old. I turned 21 the next month in May. My birthday's in May. So I'm 20 years old. I joined Primerica. And I just started part-time. My first year, I made an extra $15,000. But like the 9th month, we made, I don't know, or we qualified for RVP. We did 30 by 30 the 9th month in the business. So we did 30 by 30. Brandon's qualifications time, you had to do 30 by 30 2 months in a row. So we did that, gave up 100% of our team as replacement, and moved from Southern Utah, where we grew up, and we moved to Boise, Idaho. Why did we move to Boise? I was in an airport and I asked some dude what he did for a living, and he said Primerica. So I looked up Primerica on the leaders bulletins in Idaho, and nobody was doing anything in Boise. There was a couple of 30 grand base shops, and I knew it was a good sized city. And so I decided to move up there. So we moved up there. And our first year there, we made $115,000, and this was in 2007. Our next year in 2008, we made $220,000, and I was 23. By the end of that year, we were making about 40 grand a month. So our income, our rolling 12, was like rocking. And then in 2009, we made $465,000. The last month of that year, we had made $52,000 for the month. So we were pumped. And I want you guys to know, I was living, and I'll talk about this, but I was living on $3,500 a month. I never changed it. Like, I never changed my living expenses. And so here we were making 50 grand a month, living on 3,500. and investing it like crazy. And so by the company went public in 2010. By March of 2011, I was a cash millionaire. And so I mean, like, we had an account with $1 million in it, you know, not our net worth, not our business, none of that. My goal, I wanted $1 million, because for me, some of you guys get that feeling in your stomach. You ever get that pit in your stomach? You wake up in the morning, like, man, am I good enough? Can I do this? Man, we got to go for it, man. I'm scared. I'm excited. You have this feeling, and it almost feels negative. And I always thought that feeling was negative. I always try to get rid of it. I always try to get rid of it because I thought it was a negative emotion. I thought it was like, I thought I wasn't supposed to have that feeling. I get $1 million saved. I know where I was at. I know what I was wearing. This is how important it was for me in my life. I called Brandon, my upline, and I go, Brandon, dude, I finally saved $1 million. And he goes, dude, congratulations. I go, but you don't understand, dude. I'm still scared to death. Like, I'm still scared. I thought I'd feel different. And he goes, Jeff, he goes, the day you don't feel that is the day you need to call me. The day you don't feel that is the day you need to call me. I hang up the phone. I start thinking about it, and I realize, like, oh, this isn't a bad feeling. This is drive. This is determination. This is ambition. This is a gift from God. Not everybody gets this feeling. This ain't a negative feeling. I need to learn to embrace this. It's just uncomfortable. But success is never comfortable. So what my whole life I perceived as this negative feeling that I always thought money would erase, it was actually the thing that allowed me to get financially independent. And I need to feed that fuel, or I need to fuel that flame inside of my gut, right? That I thought was scared. And yeah, I'm scared because I want to win. Yeah, I'm nervous because I want to do more. Yeah, I feel like it's never enough because I feel like there's more to go get. Right. And so, we become financially independent, and I started getting comfortable just like anybody does. Right. And so I told Kelsey, I go home one day and I said, we're going to move. We're going to go do it all over again. So we moved down to Las Vegas, July 4th of 2011. And we were NSDs when we moved down there. And we're $400,000 earners. And then we just grew our income, and we just kept growing our income, became SNSD. And then I always had this dream to sail around the world. I wanted to buy a boat and sail around the world with my family. I didn't have a father growing up. And, you know, my whole life, I just wanted to be a great father, a great husband. You know, the things that I didn't have, I wanted to be the person in my family to change those things. I knew it was going to take a lot of money, but I knew it was also going to be I had to be a great man. I had to learn from these incredible people like Ed and Yvonne, you know, like these incredible marriages and great fathers and people like this. I was intentionally in my career learning these things so that I could go pass that on to my family. And thank God, you know, we're at a place now I get to spend every day with my kids. You know, I get to do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whoever I want, regardless of what it costs. And our team is Team Freedom, you know, and freedom to me, and I don't know what drives you, but freedom is what drives me. Everything. I tell everybody, call me Mr. Freedom. You call me whatever you want, but you call me Mr. Freedom, right? I love freedom. And what does freedom mean to me? It means I got to do whatever I want. That nobody gets to be able to tell me when to show up, when to leave. Now, that doesn't mean I won't show up early. I won't stay late. I will. I just want to do it on my terms. I want to have the ability to go and chase my goals and my dreams for my family. And I don't want to be doing it for somebody else. You know, so many people live their entire lives for the approval of others. And this is why you see depression and you see all this, all this craziness happen in the world, because people are so worried about how they feel instead of what their actions are and what kind of life are they actually building. Right. And it's not comfortable. It's just not. It's always uncomfortable. So I would just encourage you, while the world is trying to tell you it's okay to be comfortable and everybody just accept who you are and all, that's bull crap. I'm just telling you, you should love who you are in the mirror, and you should have a massive desire to change who you are inside continuously. Why? Because you want your kids to see you grow. You want your kids to see you become better. You want your kids to see an example of growth, drive, determination, improvement. That's what you want, right? I think we all want these things, but they're uncomfortable. So naturally, what the world has done is tell you, hey, just be comfortable. It's okay. Love you the way you are. You know, at church on Sunday, the pastor said, hey, God loves you the way you are, but he loves you so much, he refuses to allow you to stay that way. And I think if we truly love ourselves and we truly love our kids, we want to go change. We want to get better, you know? And so that's a little bit about our story and what has got us here. You know, we've been able to make and save and invest millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I feel blessed that way. And so what are some tools that have helped us get to this point? Okay. Number one, I think you got to have a goal. Coming into Primerica in 2007, or going RVP in 2007, and really started growing my income 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010. Some of you may be too young to know that that there was a massive recession, you know, and there's, I don't know, we'll see what happens with this one, but there was a massive recession in 07, 08, 09. And I didn't own a house. So I was 22, 23, 24 years old. And I was just chucking, I was saving 100% of my bonus check. And then I would live on 30 or 3,500. And then at the end of the month, I would just sweep everything into investments. So I was always cash broke, right? Even though I wasn't broke, but I was cash broke. So I was always had this goal to get financially independent. So I'll go back to goals. When I came into Primerica, I had one goal. That's it. I just had one goal, and that was to be a cash millionaire by the time I was 30. Okay. The biggest mistake I see most people make is they don't actually have financial goals. That because society tells you you shouldn't chase money, you shouldn't try to get rich, or money is the root of all evil. And all of it's BS, by the way. It's always broke people that say this stuff, okay? You'll never hear somebody rich say it. You just won't. And it's not because of any other reason than money is a great tool. Money is not the root of all evil. In fact, the root of all evil is the love of money. It is putting it above others, relationships, your family, friendships, is letting it become between people or dictate your decisions or your choices. So think about that. If the love of money dictates your choices or your decisions, and you make negative decisions, that can still make you broke, right? So just because there's a lot of people that are broke that worship money. They worship rappers and these athletes, and they put a lot of weight onto their opinions and what they say. And really, they have no education on what they say. And because they made money and this other person doesn't, they take their advice. That is called the love of money. You're worshiping that person because they have a lot of money. That's stupid, right? You should look at somebody's life. Like I look at a couple like Ed and Yvonne. I go, they've been married, I don't know how many years, but a lot of years. I know that 30 something years probably. They've been financially successful. Look at their children, y'all. I mean, just look at Eric and Jason. I mean, if you're a parent and you look at Eric and Jason, you got to be so proud. I mean, to me, that's winning in life. The money they made is a byproduct of what made all this other stuff. Okay. But I promise you they had financial goals. I promise you they had a goal to save money. 38 years, man. Congratulations. That's inspiring. And I'm going to come back to this in just a second because it drove me. Okay. So I think you should have a goal. For me, it was to save $1 million, right? I wanted to have $1 million invested, but you should have a goal financially, whatever that is. And I'll wrap it up and give kind of wherever you're at in your life and kind of give you some goals that I think you can start with if you don't know where to start. But number one is you got to have a goal. So once you set this goal, okay, so for me, it was $1 million. Now you got to reverse engineer it. You know, Brandon Neal and I have a podcast today. It's called The Solid Podcast. If any of you guys ever want to listen to it, we enjoy it. We have a lot of fun. We got a podcast today. And the podcast we're recording today is on goals. You know, we're getting ready to start at the beginning of the year. And a lot of people have just never been trained or taught how to set goals. And so we want to teach people how to set goals, but you've got to know that. So for me, I'll just give you this example. I wanted $1 million. I'm 21 years old. I want to have $1 million by the time I'm 30. So I got 10 years, right? 21, 22, 23. I got 10 years to save $1 million. So I take that $1 million if I invest it in the mutual funds. Now I believe in what we do, right? We teach people to buy term and invest the difference in mutual funds, live below your means, get out of debt. But you know the problem in Primerica, and I'm going to put you all on blast right now. Most of you do not even have an F&A. You don't follow your financial game plan. Yeah, you bought a term insurance policy just to buy it, but you don't know why you got a certain amount. You don't know how, you didn't buy a certain amount for a certain reason. You're not investing your money. You're not following a debt stacking plan, and you got to do these things. See, I believed in what we did wholeheartedly. like wholeheartedly, hook, line, and sinker. I know it works. And so, I took this goal of saving $1 million. I go, if I put my money in mutual funds, what have they been telling me it's going to average? 12%. So I didn't just believe them. I did a lot of research. You know, I could show you, I got a library in my office right now I got a huge library, and I got books and books and books, and a lot of them are on personal finance. What business are we in, y'all? We're in the personal finance business. So when's the last time you read a book on personal finance? When's the last time you went to a seminar on personal finance? See, I'll tell you, early on in my career, I was 22 years old, and someone launched this personal finance seminar. I go, I'm going to go to it. And I went to it, and the guy says, hey, do you currently have a Roth IRA? And I was making like 200 grand a year. And I can't put money in a Roth IRA at this point because I was making too much money, right? And I go, no, I don't have a Roth. I make too much. And he goes, so are you putting your money in an IRA? I go, no, I'm just putting it in mutual funds. He goes, why don't you put your money in an IRA? And I go, because, dude, I'm going to be way younger than 59 and a half before I retire. And he goes, Jeff, he goes, did you know that there's a rule called 72T distribution? I go, what's that mean? He goes, it means that you can do a systematic withdrawal of your estate prior to 59 and a half from a retirement plan. So you can still benefit from the tax advantages and the tax deferred plans like IRAs and these kind of tax advantage plans that the government allows us to invest in. And you can still get to that money prior to 59 and a half without paying all these penalties. And I go, no way. So when I went to that seminar, I went, there are simple things that nobody's teaching. Nobody knows. And so when I learned that, I go, man, I'm just going to keep getting educated, because I was young in the personal finance business. I had a lot of guys. I was replacing cash value like crazy. And I would have these dudes that have been doing it for 30 years come show up to an agent confrontation and test me. Well, I wanted my clients. I wasn't doing it to like try to pat myself on the back. I wanted my clients to know that, look, if you bet on me, I'm doing the same thing. Whatever I tell you to do, I'm doing it. And I don't just do it. I know it. I'm not just doing it because somebody else told me I should do it. I'm doing it because I know that it works. And so my goal, when I believe mutual funds work, I know they do. They've worked for me very well. They told me when I joined Primerica that I could expect an average of 10 to 12% rate of return. And I'll tell you guys, my mutual funds have done way better than 10 to 12%. Okay. Now I'm blessed. I started investing in 08, 09. I didn't stop. Everybody else stopped. I didn't. This last recession, COVID, everybody stopped. I didn't. I have a PAC for 10 grand a month. It goes in no matter what. Every month, 10 grand a month, no matter what it is. I just throw, I never look at it. I just put money in the market. I don't care what's going on. I don't need the money. I'm 37. There's a long time before I need the money. I don't really care what's happening in the world right now. So my goal was $1 million at 12%. I knew that in 10 years, I had to invest $4,250 a month to get $1 million. If I was going to do it in 10 years. If I wanted to do it in 5 years, I needed to invest $12,500 a month. So most people, they have a goal, but they haven't actually reverse engineered it to know exactly what do you have to do. So if I got to invest $4,200 a month to get it inside of 10 years, what do I got to do to make enough money to invest $4,200 a month? And if my bills are $3,500 and I need to invest $4,200, that means if I got to pay some taxes, I need to make 12, 15 grand a month. And then people go, how your first year at the end of the year, you're making 20 grand a month? I was just trying to make enough money to invest 42.50 so I could get $1 million at 30. I didn't buy a house. Everybody's telling me you should buy a house. Oh, Jeff, you should buy a new car. Check this out, you guys. I was driving a Nissan Altima making 40 grand a month. Brandon Neal showed up to Boise and goes, Jeff, you driving a Nissan? I go, dude, it works just fine. He goes, bro, you're the only guy making any money. You can't drive a Nissan. I go, okay, I'll buy a Cadillac, So I spent like 40 grand on a Cadillac, It was like 10 grand more than my Nissan, but everybody thought it was better. This is how stupid perception is when it comes to money. Okay. It's dumb, but and so I buy a Cadillac because Brandon tells me I should. I drove that Cadillac, I took it in when I moved to Las Vegas in 2011. I took it in to go get an oil change. And they said, your car's toast. Like, we can't change oil on this. Like, you need a new motor. So you can keep it. I buy a new car, So I drove that thing literally until it ran into the ground. And I had a goal. I was trying to get rich. I wasn't trying to drive a nice car and impress somebody. I had a nice car. It's okay to have a nice car. But that wasn't goal number one. Goal number one was get financially independent and achieve my goal. And I wasn't going to change my goal en route to victory because it got hard or inconvenient, or all of a sudden I saw what somebody else was doing. I've never really been swayed by the crowd. I've always, fortunately, I thank the Lord every day that God gave me some kind of like thing in my soul where I don't really care what everybody else is doing. I care about people. I care about what happens to them, but I don't really care what they're doing when it impacts my life. I'm going to go do what I'm going to do. And if I can pour into others, awesome. If not, no problem, but I'm going to achieve my goals. And so you got to have a goal when it comes to personal finance. I don't know what that is for you. It could be right now. Let's say you've got 300 grand in debt. Your goal can't be get out of debt. Okay. Because you tell yourself that every day, you're going to stay in debt forever because your mind is always going to look for a way to fix things. This is why humans are always fixers, So if your goal is get out of debt, you're always going to have debt to get out of. Rather than if you got 300 grand in debt and you're sick of having 300 grand in debt and you want $250,000 in cash, you should have a goal to invest 550 grand. You pay off the 300, you got 250 left over, if that makes sense. So that's a goal. Then you got to create a plan. Once you have a plan, you got to stick to the plan. And the way you stick to a plan is through discipline. Discipline. It's like, my wife and I and Brandon and Lexi, actually, we just went to Boston and we did this freedom tour, and where, these pilgrims or whatever, they landed on Plymouth Rock and all this stuff, and the freedom tour. And they were telling us they got these like things in the middle of town where it's like, they put your head in it and your arms in it. And it looks like someone's going to like chop your head off or something, like a guillotine or something. And I remember I asked the dude, I go, hey, what are these all over town? And he goes, you never seen one of these? I go, yeah, like movies. They're like, like chop your head off or something. He goes, no. He goes, those are for children and parents of children. I go, what do you mean? He goes, listen, here's what they used to do back then. If you were a parent and your kids were acting crazy, they would put the parent in that for their kids acting crazy. I go, are you serious? He goes, yeah, this was a cultural thing. If your kids act crazy, they punish the parent. And then he goes, but that's not the actual punishment for the child. The real punishment for the child is when the parent gets out and the parent goes home, right? He goes, but then the kids never act that way again. And this is discipline, right? This is a form of discipline where it's like, man, I am going to make sure that I act according regardless of my emotions. I remember thinking that like, dang, what America, I know when I grew up, my mama whipped my butt. My mama would get a spoon, a wooden spoon. She would break it on my butt, and I would laugh until she got a plastic one and it didn't break anymore, And that was the past. And nowadays, people are like, oh, you can't spank your kids. And, and I agree, hitting your kids is never good. However, I would never dare to talk back to my mom. I respected my mom. And in modern day society, what I have seen lacking tremendously is discipline, whether that is discipline to your goals, making your bed every morning, staying in good shape, eating good food, not always saying what you think on social media, right? Not always trying to attack someone because they don't believe the same thing you believe. So these things are called discipline. And the great thing about discipline, it's like a muscle. The more you work it, the stronger it gets, especially when it comes to money. And here's why. You start practicing discipline with money and you start saving a little bit of money. What happens? You get excited. So you start seeing some hope. You start seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. It starts working. And guess what your internal mind says? This is working. I don't care. Wow, I'm going to keep doing this. And you figure out a way to keep adding to it. And that's your internal mind or your discipline muscle, if you will, that you're building over time, that eventually just saving money. It's just what you do. It's just who you are. So I think that when it comes to getting financially independent, you have to have a goal, you have to have a plan, you got to stay disciplined to that plan. And for me, it has always been investing every single month, regardless of what happens. I don't care what's going on in the world. Let me give you some insight onto that. And then I'll wrap it up with a few just plans, and then I'll open it up for some questions. The problem with most people, including myself, is our perspective. One of my favorite quotes is by Wayne Dyer. Said, you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So that again, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. So the problem is especially when it comes to money and it comes to investments and it comes to advice and it comes to all this stuff, is most people are looking at life through like this little hole. And they're only looking at their life through their perspective, right? So they'll say things like, oh, yeah, mutual funds. Yeah, there was a recession. Oh, they don't do that good. You should buy gold. All this stuff you hear people say, right? Crypto, you hear people saying that last year. You can't hear from them anymore. And so it's what happens to us is we start listening to these perspectives and they start influencing our choices. But I want you to think about this, okay? If you take advice, so I'm not telling you to take my advice. I'm telling you to go read, self-improve, learn these things, and then go study and get good at these things, right? But if we take advice from somebody, like I'm 37 years old. So what's the most amount of experience I could possibly have in personal finance? I mean, what, 20 years? If you start talking to people about what's going to happen in America, America's only 250 years old. America's only 250 years old. The Chinese Empire, 5,000 years old. Did you guys know the Dutch Empire, 1400 BC, the Dutch Empire was already had an open trading market like the New York Stock Exchange? That's 1400 years before Christ was born. They already had an exchange like the New York Stock Exchange. There was people investing. And did you know the Dutch Empire only had a population of 2 million and they controlled 90% of the world's wealth? They don't teach us this stuff in school. They don't even teach history now that's 200 years old. They teach you about the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire, you all know that like Socrates and Aristotle, there's only 250 recorded documents that were written down by these men. And from the original time they wrote it, those are all 400 years old. So nobody that actually wrote what Socrates and Aristotle said even lived in the same generation as them. They never met these men. So you think about, if we look at perspective and we look at markets and what happens with investments, if we step back and we say, okay, what has happened in a macroeconomic scale in time? We go back a couple thousand years into markets and what has happened. It's pretty clear that you can make some good decisions. These little blips happening in a short term, which a short term could be 50 years for us, that they're kind of irrelevant. The important thing is just making wise decisions on a daily basis. And over time, great things happen. And then you can step back. But the closer we get to the problem, the less we can actually see the problem. The further away we get, we can actually start finding solutions. So this is why you got to start looking at like mutual funds. I never changed my mutual funds. I got the same ones today as in 2007. When I first started my mutual fund, I got the same ones today. Edward knows he got it. I can give him a list. Exactly. I just said, you know what? I'm going to do my research, make a good decision, and stick with my decision if it's good, regardless of how I feel at the moment. And that comes to discipline, education, learning. And so that is my hope for you guys when it comes to personal finance, that you go pick up some books. There's some incredible people that you can learn from. And I'm not going to throw out any names because, some people like different people, but let me tell you where not to get your advice. Not on Instagram, not on TikTok, not from a 30-second video. You know where you should get it? From books. Like I'm reading right now, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. This man wrote this book a long time ago. I want to learn from somebody whose book for 2,000 years has influenced populations. Obviously, it's lived, right? The Bible has some phenomenal personal finance lessons. And people want to avoid them. Why? Because it takes discipline. But if you go read and you go research and you see success that has lived for thousands of years, not 20 years or 10 years, like some of the people that we're led to believe are heroes, but instead we go look for messages that are fundamentally sound and they last for a long time, you're going to have success regardless of your talent, skill, or whatever God-given ability you've been given. I know I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I want to learn. I want to get better. And the only way I'm going to learn and get better is by learning from other people that are far smarter than me, right? So the last thing is what are a couple of game plans? Number one is you've got to live below your means, okay? I'll just tell you this through my story. Live below your means. I didn't buy a house until I could pay cash for it. I was a cash millionaire. When I bought that house was $289,000. I didn't buy this ridiculous house. I didn't buy a house till I could pay cash for it. So I buy this house for $289,000 in 2011. Okay. 2011, it was actually a condo on the strip, like a penthouse. And yeah, it was cheap for a penthouse on the strip, but that was because it was 2011. This doctor bought it for $1 million. I had the cash. I got a great deal. I sold it 2 years after that for just under $400,000. I took that money, that just over a couple $100,000, that my house was paid off, right? So I took that $400,000. I built a house in Las Vegas, and we were building that house, you guys. I was making, 50, 60, 70 grand a month sometimes. We were building this house. It was $760,000. It was about 5,000 square foot, single story, acre of land. And I called Hector, and Kelsey goes, "Don't call Hector." I go, "Why?" She goes, "He's going to tell you not to buy the house." I go, "If Hector says not to buy the house, I'm not buying the house." So I call Hector. I go, "Hector, here's where I'm at financially." I tell him exactly how much money I got. Now, why did I do this, you guys? Because I didn't want to make an emotional decision about money. I wanted to make a logical decision, but we're always emotionally attached to our money. So you got to have a money mentor, somebody who you're willing to be open and honest with. You're willing to be transparent. And then most importantly, you're willing to actually take their advice. So I call Hector. Hector says, "Yeah, Jeff, do it." So I do it. I bought the house, $760,000. 2 years later, that house was worth $1 million. I sold it for $1.2 million. It helped because I had like YG, this famous rapper, moved right behind me. And, I had a few famous people, this magician lived, and it helped, right? Because in this neighborhood, we had a lot of these famous people moving in. And so I sold my house for $1.2 million. And I owed $400,000 on that house at the time, and rates were super low. So, and so I took that money and I invested it. I paid rent on a house. I thought the market was going to crash. I just didn't know when it was. I paid rent on a house. So I went from living in this dream home, this dream home, 5,000 square foot, single story, incredible backyard. I mean, our backyard was on the cover of magazines and stuff like this. It was amazing. A basketball court, soccer field, pool, cabanas, outdoor kitchen, TVs, fire pits. I mean, you name it, right? It was a dream. But you know what was a bigger dream to me than living in a nice house? Being so financially free, I could do whatever I wanted. And so we sold that house. I paid rent on a house for 12 months, and it wasn't a bad house, but it wasn't near what we had. I paid 12 months in advance on that house. I thought we'd have 12 months, put a couple of offers on some houses, find a good deal. Nobody accepted. The next year, COVID hits. Listen, the house I'm in right now, this was 2020, April 15th of 2020. The whole world was supposed to be under quarantine. So hate me or love it, I didn't give a crap what the world was doing. Again, I'm just naturally rebellious. I think you tell me I got to stay at home, I ain't staying at home. So I went to go look at houses. I left Las Vegas. They were closed down. I went to Utah. Why'd I go to Utah? Because Utah was still wide open. Jimmy Kimmel did a episode, and he said, St. George, Utah, the stupidest people in America. And that St. George is where I grew up. And I go, why is he calling everybody stupid? And that was because they never closed down. So I drove to St. George on April 15th, when everybody's supposed to be in quarantine. We bought a house. This guy was scared to death. He thought he was going to lose everything. COVID just hit, the end of the world. The house was listed for $1 million. I gave him an offer for $775,000. He accepted my offer. My house today is worth over $2 million. And I'm like, dude, I crushed it, and it wasn't because I got lucky. It was because I understood that I could make decisions with cash while everybody else was fearful. I could make a logical decision, not emotionally, but it had to do with education and what had happened in the past, right? Because I've done all these things. And so I think it's an important thing. So when it comes to real estate, that's how I've made money in real estate, just by making good decisions, by making wise decisions, and not trying to be comfortable and saying, oh, but this is my house. And to me, a house is just a box to live in, right? One day they're going to put you in a box anyway, and it's just temporary until then, so I want freedom. I want to spend time with my family, and I want a nice house. I want these nice things, but I want to win I want to win the money game. And so when it comes to a game plan, you got to live below your means, whatever that means for you at this time. So if you have a house that, your payment is 50% of your income or 40% of your income, you need to sell your house. And you go, Jeff, don't you know what the market's like? I don't care what the market's like. Sell your house. Go live in an apartment, right? Downsize. Well, Jeff, I don't, my kids and all this kind of stuff. Your kids should see you sacrifice, because they're seeing you right now live beyond their means, and they're going to grow up and do the same thing. They should see you live below their means, below your means. And so you put money away and seeing you being wise financially. And then you know what they're going to see? The biggest blessing your kids are going to see is progression. They're going to see you go from an apartment to a little house, to a nicer house, to a nicer house, to a nicer house, because you made wise decisions. And then when they grow up, they're going to realize, hey, if I sacrifice now, if I have the discipline to wait, if I have delayed gratification, I have more chance of success long-term. And that's what I want my kids to see. Because we all know, if you got children, it don't matter what you tell them. It matters what they watch you do. They're like mini me's, right? That's what they always that's all they do. They just do exactly what we do. It's like the Bible says you judge a man by his fruit. And if you got kids, you're like, yep, I get that. You want to learn about somebody, just go spend some time with their kids. You'll know who they really are when no one's around. And so you got to live below your means, number one. Number two is you got to grow your income. Okay. You got to grow your income. Some of you, you're too stressed on a daily basis, and you're not thinking about growth because you're thinking about just getting by. You're thinking about all this other stuff instead of growing, being in the creative stage, right? If you're stressed out all the time, you're thinking about how can you just save everything, not creation. You got to be in the creation stage. I truly believe that this is when we find happiness. This is when we find joy. This is why when you join Primerica, you're bouncing off the walls. You're calling all your friends, not because you think you're going to be a millionaire, because God put it inside of your soul that when you're in the creative stage, that's when you find happiness. You feel good about being in that creative stage, which is improving your life, improving your kid's life, improving somebody else's life. This is why charity feels good. This is why serving our community feels good, because you're in the creative stage. And so if your income isn't growing right now, you got to grow your income. And as you grow your income, you get in that creative stage, you get committed to it. You say, you know what, I'm making 100,000, or I'm making 50, whatever your income is right now. You go, in the next 12 months, I'm doubling my income. And then you create a plan. You go through all this goal, plan, discipline. You do the same thing, just like you're going to get financially independent. It's the same way you grow your income. And then when you grow your income, you do what? You stay living below your means, you stay disciplined, and you stay investing a certain percentage. And then what happens is, after a while, that percentage that you invest, the percentage gets bigger and bigger. So I lived on $3,500 a month. I want you guys to know I live on about the same still today, but I live in a $2 million house. I actually just went and bought my wife a Mercedes AMG GT 53, a sweet car. She has an Escalade. I just bought a brand new, I live in Utah now, so I need a truck. Every dude in Utah got a truck. So I just went and bought a brand new truck. I paid 80 grand in cash for the truck. And I can do those things, but I don't think about it anymore. Like I don't have to finance anything. I just write a check. I don't think about money. It never crosses my mind, but my bills are less than $3,500 a month. So I want you to think about, when I was broke living on $3,500 a month, I can still live on the same amount, but that's because my house I don't have a payment. I don't have payment on my cars. I just $3,500 a month to live. I got to spend a lot of money at restaurants. I got to spend a lot of money doing stuff to spend $3,500 a month, to be honest with you. Like, I live an incredible life to be able to spend the same amount when I was broke. And a lot of people have a hard time comprehending that. But I promise you, if you'll make good decisions and you'll be wise financially, and you do it for a long period of time, there will come a time where those disciplines are still going to be bred in you, right? It's just who you are. But then you get to increase your standard of living dramatically without actually having to really increase the outgo that goes out, because you can just pay cash for stuff. And whether or not that's good financially, that's a whole philosophy lesson that takes a lot longer than today, that you can make decisions financially for leverage and that thing, but you shouldn't use leverage or any of that until you're stone cold wealthy, in my opinion. So that's what I would do if I were you when it comes to personal finance. That's what I did. And I'm so grateful we did it, you guys. I look at our life today and what we learned from Primerica and so many great leaders, and it works. What we do works. I'm passionate about what we do. Everybody needs life insurance. You don't know when that day is going to come. Everybody needs to invest money in mutual funds. Everybody needs to get out of debt. Everybody. Like, who doesn't need what we do? Everybody. But you want to know why you're nervous to shout it from the rooftops? Because it ain't working for you yet, because you didn't decide to do it yet. You got to decide today to go, you know what? I'm going to do what Primerica teaches me to do. And I'm going to do it, and I'm going to go show the world what I do. I'll end with this. My wife, Kelsey, a lot of people know Kelsey's actually still an RVP. Her mom is an RVP, and Kelsey has securities licenses with her. And just, I don't know, not too long ago, we had some people over to the house, and they had $250,000 in an investment. And we start talking, and I don't have my investment license anymore, you know. And so I'm like, I can't help you. No matter me, talk to Kelsey, you know. And so they start talking, and they got $250,000, and I go, I said, who's your money with? And so she tells me. I go, where's it at? And she goes, I don't know. And I go, you mean to tell me that you trust some random dude with $250,000 for you? And she goes, well, I guess. And I go, look, let me just teach you how mutual funds work. So I just sit down, teach her how mutual fund works, teach her what Primerica does. Honest to goodness truth. Hey, here's mutual funds. Here's how it works. I'm into the conversation. She looks at Kelsey and goes, Kelsey, so this is what you do? And Kelsey goes, yeah. She goes, how do I move my money with you tonight? So Kelsey does the application. Kelsey rolls over this lady's $250,000. Her agent calls, and the agent calls like a couple days later, and she three-ways me in. And I go, hey, dude, my wife's the investment license person or whatever. I go, but this will be really easy. I go, if you want to, let's just meet up. He goes, okay. So guess what I did when we went to that point? I just printed out my personal mutual fund statement. That's all I did. Print out my personal mutual fund statement. I text the dude. I said, hey, please bring your personal mutual fund statement and your life insurance policies. So the dude shows up. Guess what he doesn't have? He ain't got his life insurance. He ain't got his own mutual fund statement. I just showed my mutual fund. I go, all I did is I just hand the page to Kelsey, and Kelsey goes, here's our funds. And the client asks her rep, and she goes, where's yours? And he goes, oh, I didn't bring them. She goes, oh, you don't want to show me what you put your money in, huh? And he goes, well, it's not that. All of our situations are different. She goes, I just wanted to know if you tell me the truth. So we're done with this meeting. We can leave. Kelsey, go ahead. We're just going to stick with 2 seconds. And she didn't care how much money anybody had. She just wanted to know, are you actually doing what you're telling us to do? That's all that mattered. And I don't know what Kelsey made, but Kelsey, I don't know, $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000, just because of why? Because we actually put our money in mutual funds like we told her it was a good idea to do. And she knew we were telling the truth. So a lot of times you'll be able to shout from the rooftops, and you'll feel so much more confident if you're just practicing what you preach. It don't matter if it's $25 a month or $50 a month, y'all. Just start saving and investing your money, and then go tell everybody about it. And you'll start recruiting more people. You'll start closing more business. You'll start setting more appointments. But you got to get passionate about what we actually do for people. And we help people get financially independent in communities where people don't show up to. Ain't no financial advisors showing up to the community my mom raised us in. There ain't no financial advisors going to those communities. Only people going there are Primericans. And you got to be proud of that. You got to be proud of that. The only way you're truly going to believe in it is you actually do it yourself. So Hey, Edward, thank you so much for having me on, man. I'm fine to stick around and answer some questions if you want me to, but hopefully that helped this morning.
Bro, you killed it, man. Absolutely. I got the group chats like blowing up for questions. So this is SVP Willis, right? He's got some questions for you.
Jeff, it's good to see you, man. You're looking good, brother.
Hey, thank you, man. Appreciate that.
Great job today. Mine doesn't necessarily have to do with most of what you talked about, man. What I got interested in was this podcast that you and Brandon are doing. Can you tell us a little bit more about it and why we would need to access it?
Yeah. So, I would love, if you guys want to plug in and watch, but the solid podcast is this, you guys. I grew up raised by a single mom. Grew up poor. My brothers were all gangsters and drug dealers. Okay. I thank God I ended up in a boxing gym because I got in a fight and I didn't go down that path. And Brandon Neal grew up with his parents are still married, never been divorced, perfect family, your quintessential American suburban family, right? I didn't grow up like that. We couldn't have had the most polar opposite upbringings. In fact, still today, I make fun of Brandon all the time. I go, dude, you are so naive, and it was polar opposite. But somehow we ended up together, best friends. He was the best man in my wedding. He was my mentor and changed my life. And we realized the thing that brought us together was our desire for having a solid life, if you will. I wanted to have a great marriage. It wasn't an option for me. I'm going to be a great father. It's not an option for me. I want to be financially independent. It's not an option for me. I want to build a great business. Not an option for me. And when I joined Primerica, I set goals, but only business goals. People didn't teach me how to set spiritual goals and financial goals like this, like we're talking about this morning. I'm telling you guys are blessed. So we just said when we sold our business, we go, man, what are we gonna do now? Like, how do we continue to do something to where we can put out this incredible information to the world where we're not on stage, we're not able to influence and inspire people on a weekly basis like we were. So how do we just continue to keep this message and maybe help and inspire a lot of people in the world? And that's kind of where the Solid Podcast has come from. And so, we put people on the podcast. If we have a guest, we want to make sure they live a solid life. That if you took advice from somebody that was on there, that you could learn from them and they truly have that solid life. So yeah, that's what it's about, man. It's all the same stuff that I just believe in. I believe that, making money is a byproduct of who you are as an individual. I just saw in the chat, someone asked where can you find it? It's iTunes or wherever, YouTube, Spotify, wherever they do it. It actually just cost us a lot of money. It doesn't make any money or anything. It genuinely is just like a charity project for us. We're excited. We have a lot of fun doing it, and appreciate you guys' support if you want to plug in.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man.
Right. Go ahead, Tony.
Hey, Coach. I guess I'll call you Coach Fieldstad, Coach Jeff. Hey, what I guess I know, of course, not investment license, what have you, not a suggestion, but maybe just your own personal opinion. Just some of your three basic accounts that everyone should have, like I know the stuff that we teach in our How Money Works workbook, but three basic accounts and the names, like any funds that you have just on your side. Like,
if you want me to just tell you specific funds, pretty easy. Use a money market for your emergency fund. I don't think it should be in a savings account, or I don't think it should be accessible easily. I also don't believe that you should have your accounts linked to your phone. Okay. Because you guys are always on your phone, you're reading the news, you get stressed out, the world's going to end, you go make decisions. It's just not a wise thing. So, emergency fund should be in a money market. You should have a short-term fund. I've always used the equity and income fund from Invesco. Like, it's a great fund. It's done incredible for a long period of time. And I'm not, obviously everybody's situation is different. So please don't take this as gospel, if you will. But I put 99% of my long-term money in S&P 500 index fund, which I believe is VADAX. Is the ticker. That's it. And I've probably averaged, 18, 19%. So when they say 12%, I'm like, now I did start investing in the last Great Recession. I've never stopped. That helped tremendously. I put a ton of money in through that period of time. But yeah, so those are the three funds.
And then how much would you save, like percentage wise?
So I think if you want to know my honest opinion and what I'm like, if I'm having a one-on-one conversation, Edward and I had this conversation. If you're not saving and investing 50% of your income, you're living above your means. So when I say living below your means, if you're living below your means, you're able to save 50 or more percent of your income.
Okay, so I have a map of 20% on my life, and then my investments, I would just get a direct deposit, and then I'm not cutting it. I'm not calling in my mutual funds to wire the money over. It's just in my account, and then and
that's awesome. And I always use MAP as well. And what I always did with MAP is I mapped 100% of my bonus check. And the reason I did that is because I noticed most RVPs wait for that big bonus check to come in and they live on it. Right. And then they're like advances, whatever throughout and then they kind of save their advances. I did the opposite. I saved my bonus check and then it caused me to be motivated to grow my advances. So this is how I grew my business, because I had to grow my advances to go pay my bills because I already saved my whole bonus check. And you guys, the bonus when I was like in 08, 09, it was a 30% bonus. We only had a 95% RVP contract. We didn't have no 110. So our bonus check was like literally the majority of our income. Override on a senior regional was so small. It was just like, it was like a district overriding a rep. And so it motivated me to grow my income by investing all of my bonus check, never touched it, and then just grow my advances throughout the month.
And so for that part-timer, because we have a lot of part-timers on this call that want to come full-time, but just, of course, there's that fear.
Yep. If you're part-time, you should be saving 100% of your income, period.
Oh, that's awesome. Tony, go ahead, man. We got a few for you, Jeff, so apologize.
I'll be brief. Hey, what's going on, Coach?
Tony, what's up, man?
How you living, bro?
Doing amazing.
Dope. Well, I appreciate you. You're retired, man. You don't get paid to be here, so I truly appreciate you. Jumping in here. We're not even in your hierarchy, right? So it means a lot for you to spend this time. So thank you for that. I got a couple. So my first, I'm going to ask if you had to rebuild again, right? And I know I'm talking to old school. I mean, you're the face of Primerica when I came in, like the things you did back then, would they be different than the tactics you would use today, considering social media?
Yes. Yeah, totally. I think, first of all, I would say that the fundamentals have not changed. Okay, there's no such thing as a new fundamental. It's like if you go to church on Sunday and they go, "Hey guys, we're gonna choose someone else to preach to." It's like I don't know if there's some fundamentals that last and that pass the test of time. And those have not changed in Primerica, but people think they have. And I think it's a problem. Meaning that like when COVID hit, all of a sudden people could use Zoom. But what people don't know is we were using Zoom in our hierarchy like in 2010, 2011. Google Docs, like real-time Primerica or real-time POL actually came from our hierarchy because we were using Google Docs to get real-time numbers from people and start doing competitions and stuff. And so you have a lot of these fundamentals of business, prospecting, setting appointments, op meeting attendance. Those things haven't changed, even though people think they have. They haven't. What has happened is you have these incredible tools like Zoom, social media, internet tools, if you will. If you treat them like it's a business, how fast have these things changed? Has social media changed?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like what if you would have built your business on TikTok and then all of a sudden right now, the government is trying to ban TikTok and then boom, they shut it down tomorrow. Now you ain't got a business. What happens if your whole business is Instagram and then boom, something changes, Mark Zuckerberg, something happens and all of a sudden Instagram's gone. So what I would suggest, and again, you need to talk to your upline. What I would suggest is to look at the fastest growing churches in your area. And I would build a model very similar to them. I would build a model. Now, why? Because a pastor has to do a really good job of not making about himself. Now, there are a few mega pastors that have done it, and I love them. They're awesome. They've made a lot of impact. If they're bringing people to Christ, in my mind, it's a great thing. However, I think the greatest pastors in the world are the pastors that they never make it about themselves. It isn't about them, meaning that they could develop and duplicate a leader and replace them. For example, I have a friend in Las Vegas. His name is Vance Pittman. Vance Pittman is a client of ours. He's a Primerica client. He runs a mega church. It's called Hope. It's a big church. I think at one time it was like the third largest church in the United States. Well, Vance, he had a goal to open up 300 churches when he started Hope. And now Hope has been responsible for 80 church plants. But his goal was 300. He goes, if I keep going like this, I'm not going to hit my goal. So he steps down as main pastor and replaces with another great friend of mine who used to run our Bible study at our office named Scott Worthington. So now Scott is the main pastor of Hope. Hope continued to grow at the same rate after Vance left, which means what? It wasn't about Vance. It was about the kingdom, right? It didn't matter who was preaching the word. They're doing the same thing. So we need to do the same thing when it comes to developing leaders. And we want to be able to have people have massive success long after we're gone, especially if we don't have egos, right? If our goal is really to develop and train and pour into others, then it needs to be about them, not us. And we need to have a system where we can leave, put in another leader, and it can continue to grow, right? So I think the reason I think whether you're a Christian or not, I think you should study that model because it works. It's just a fact. It works. I asked Edouard this the other day. I said, Edouard, what do you think would have happened to churches if they would have said, hey guys, no more physical attendance. We're just going to go all on Zoom? They would be gone. Like a lot of these churches would be gone, right? In fact, the churches that grew were mega churches that said, no, we're showing up. We don't care what the world is. In fact, in Florida, in Tampa, there's a pastor who wrote a phenomenal book. And when they told him he had to shut down, he didn't shut down. He went from doing service once a week. He freaking rolled out turf in his parking lot, and he started doing it 7 days a week. Yes. And what happened to his church? Why? Because people need connection, people need community, but that doesn't mean you don't use Zoom. That doesn't mean you don't use social media. You do use those. They're phenomenal tools. Why would you not? But there are fundamentals. And I think if it comes to like fundamentals of growing a Primerica business today, I would stick with those fundamentals and I would add on these new tools. With social media, I would get phenomenal at building your personal brand. You guys got to get good at building a brand. And I'm not talking about nice cars and all the bullcrap people post. I'm talking about good value that changes people's lives. Value, knowledge that you guys all have that you don't realize how valuable it is in Primerica because everybody's saying the same thing. But in the real world outside of Primerica, ain't nobody saying it. And you have a tremendous amount of value to offer to people. And if you did, you would capture the hearts of massive amounts of crowds. And so that's how I would use social media, is by building a personal brand, by providing value, and that value would attract people that maybe they aren't local and they can plug in Zoom. Okay. And then same thing with local people. That's how I attract them. But I want to get them plugging into a community. I want them to get them plugging in and know we're family. I can give you a hug, man. If you need something, I'm going to show up. I don't care where it's at. And so I think that's the beauty of the local community church, but also the tools that have allowed businesses to grow, like Zoom and Instagram and TikTok and all these other things. Definitely use them and just be wise with it. Know that it could go away anytime tomorrow, but that doesn't mean you don't build a personal brand. You use it to build a brand. And if they do go away, your brand didn't go away. You still have a great brand.
Right. Okay. I don't want to take over, but last question. I know you just did the 75 hard, man. What do you think, and what keeps you going, one, and then can you talk, I know you talked on discipline and consistency. Why do you think, man, as a people, folks just they're not consistent. They're not disciplined. And then what keeps you going in discipline and focus?
Yeah. The reason why most people aren't is because they avoid pain. People are so worried about being comfortable. We have a comfort crisis in America. And probably most of you on this call are facing the same crisis. Like I try to put myself in uncomfortable situations because remember this, if you don't remember anything I say today, remember this. The only time you grow is when you're uncomfortable. It's the only time you grow. So when you prospect and you're talking to someone you don't know, it's uncomfortable. That's growth. You're doing an appointment you don't want to do because you're like, man, a little bit nervous, or you're busy, or whatever, you got stuff happening. You do it anyway. You're growing. Making phone calls, you're growing. You do things that are uncomfortable. So for me, I just know that the only way you find joy is in progress. So if you want to have a good life, if you want a good attitude, you got to have progress. So I'm always just thinking about what can I do to have progress in my life? And then I seek uncomfortable challenges, like cold plunge. I do a cold plunge every day. I get in 40-degree water every day for 10 minutes, and it's not comfortable. I lift weights, heavy weights every single day. It's not comfortable. Whatever I got to do to keep myself in this growth phase, keep growing, keep setting goals, keep moving forward. So I think the reason most people don't do it is because they're seeking comfort. And if you would avoid seeking comfort and instead seek growth, and just know that if you're uncomfortable, you're going to grow. I would say that's the biggest thing, dude. And 75 hard teaches you, if you do 75 hard, it teaches you how easy it really is to have a great life. Because when you're doing 75 hard, it's 2 workouts a day, and you're following this diet, and you're doing all the stuff you should be doing anyway, right? So for me, when I started 75 hard, I was already doing everything. I already went on I work out every day, and we would go on a walk every night with my family anyway. I already followed a diet, already drank a gallon, and I'm an avid reader. So I already did everything. You know what I found out about 75 hard? If it was raining outside, I would take a day off. If we were traveling, I would take a day off. So during 75 hard, you can't do that. You just do it anyway. And so what I realized at the end of 75 hard, I realized it was the moments where I took the break. It was the moments where I took the rest that caused my lack of progress. So when I did 75 hard and it was uncomfortable, it was raining, I was sore, I was tired, I was busy, and I had to do it anyway because I committed early on and I did it anyway. It was those moments that caused all the progress, which, I mean, I've worked out every day for years, and I don't know if the progress picture from 75 hard, it's almost embarrassing to see my original picture to where I finished. And I really didn't do a whole lot different. There wasn't a whole lot of difference other than doing the uncomfortable things during that process and never taking a break. Same thing in business.
That's awesome. All right. Great job, Tony, with sneaking another question in there. All right. This will be the last one because Brendan keeps texting Jeff. Jeff's got a lot of things to do, guys. He's got a lot of things to do. So go ahead, Brendan.
Yeah, what's going on, Jeff? It's good to see
you,
man. So we me and my wife, we just had a baby, and I know you mentioned that different people are in different situations, and you should have like different goals and stuff like that. So what would you say for someone maybe in our situation who just had a baby, or because I know, like, for example, Edward's situation is different than ours. What would you say those different goals should look like?
Financial goals.
Like the financial goals.
Yeah, I think when it comes to when you just had a baby, I think it's hard, man, because when you have a baby, it's like, let me put it this way: as long as you use that child as a reason to grow and not as a weight, then it'll be great. You'll do great things. I would also remind you that your kids are not going to remember the first 4 years of their life or first 5 years of their life. They just don't. You'll remember it though. And so what I would say is, while your kids are really young, I would double down on everything that you're doing, because you're still programming those child's subconscious mind. These thoughts, the environment, the things that are being said, the things they're watching you do are still being programmed into them subconsciously. They'll never remember it. And, most likely you won't remember a lot of those times either. But this is why I would say that everything we talked about today, it's probably twice as important as what you're doing, because somebody else is watching you. And now you're impacting not just you and your wife's life, but you're also impacting someone who didn't have a choice to follow you or not, right? They're there. You put them there. And so if you look at that as an obligation, like I've always just looked at it, I tell my wife all the time, it's my job, right? I'm a father, and it's my job to put my kids in a great environment, provide them with all the tools and everything they need to succeed, and then get out of their way and let them do it. Right. And so, my oldest now is 8, and he's just getting to this place where he's aware enough to where he he really understands some of these things we've been talking about for years, right? But he's just starting to understand, but some of it's so ingrained in him. Like every day, I promise you, if I go in right now, he's up, he's watching cartoons, I can hear him, and I guarantee his bed's made, right? But I don't have to tell him to make his bed. Guess what? I make my bed every day when I get out of it. So these habits you start seeing, and I promise this is why when you look at like Ed and Yvonne, and then I respect so much about like Jason and Eric, it's Jason and Eric that make me respect Ed and Yvonne so much, because the way Jason and Eric turned out, I already know what Ed and Yvonne were doing as those men were being raised. Does that make sense? So I would say nothing changes other than the fact you have more responsibility on you. There's more of a reason to do it. And as a man, right, as a leader of your household, you have that responsibility, and it's on you. And you should pride yourself in that you get that opportunity. Not everybody gets that opportunity. I promise you, dude, there's somebody listening right now that's maybe have a hard time having kids. They've maybe struggled having children. And here you got this blessing. And the greatest thing you could do for those people that have maybe struggled is for them to watch you do everything you can plus more, and look at that child as the greatest blessing by changing your habits, changing your actions, working harder, saving more, doing all these things multiplied. That's how you earn the respect from a massive amount of people when they see you do that as well. A selfless act always earns the respect of others.
Thank you.
That's awesome, Jeff. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Jeff.
You're welcome. It's good to see you guys.
You too.
That's awesome. All right, man. Well, dude, you killed it, man. I got so many pages of notes. Thank God I'm on an iPad. So anyways, man, dude, that was awesome. This training, I'm sure, is going to be recorded and rewatched forever, brother. Just really appreciate your friendship, leadership, and mentorship, in life and in business. So just really, really appreciate it. So I'll let everybody unmute themselves and just thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys. I'm humbled and honored and really appreciate anything I can do ever to help. Man, I'm always here. So feel free to reach out and I'll be able to help any way I can. Okay.
All right, man. Appreciate it, Jeff. All right.
Thank y'all. God bless.
All right, guys. Let's kill it today. All right. Talk to you guys later.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it, brother.
All right. Hey, thank you, Jeff.